Ko reikia, kad verslas augtų greičiau? Aiškiai girdėti savo klientus, turėti tinkamus įrankius darbui, ir laiku užtikrinti reikiamus resursus. O gal svarbiausia, kad jums nereikėtų tuo rūpintis? Palikite tai mums. Mes pasirūpinsime jūsų ryšio, darbo vietos ir IT sprendimais. Susisiekime. Telia, kad verslas augtų greičiau.
Hello and welcome to the Dream to Drive Championship, the fifth round of the semi-finals. 100 fastest drivers qualify to race for the top 6 places to get through to the finals. They are divided into 4 separate divisions and race each other in door-to-door battles. The type of race evening, the car and the track are announced only 1 week before the actual event, leaving just enough time for practice. The semi-finals consists of 6 rounds in total, but only 5 best round results count in the overall standings. The finalists will challenge each other in real-life tests for the main prize, a seat in the Dream to Drive team. Karolis Jovaiša has already won a place in the finals by taking 4 out of 4 wins, but the remaining 5 finalists are still unknown, so fierce battles are just ahead of us. We head over to Finland, the Botnia Ring racetrack. Following a recent extension, it got transformed from a relatively short and twisty circuit into Finland's longest and fastest raceway. The track, located at Jurva, hosts motorsports from April to October, but remains open throughout the autumn and winter months for driving training, including ice and snow. The length of the track is 4 kilometers and 14 meters with a total of 16 corners. The participants will race in a front-wheel driven Mini Cooper JCW Challenge cars that power by a 265 horsepower engine with a 6-speed sequential gearbox. The Minis weigh 1,085 kilograms and have a relatively short wheelbase. The qualifying session will be 15 minutes long, followed by 2 20-minute sprint races, with the top 6 finishers of the first race taking reverse grid positions for the second sprint. Let's take a quick look at the championship standings before we head over to the qualifying session. So, Karolis Jovaiša has 100 points in total. He's unreachable for any other contestant, so he has already secured the place in the finals. The 5 remaining finalists are still unknown. Currently, Edvin Žadeikis is second with 48 points in total. David Kalostsai is third. Domantas Varnys fourth. Simonas Urbonas fifth. And Kamil Pawlowski, the very fast driver from Poland, is only sixth with the last race failure that he faced with his internet connection. Kamil Pawlowski is back and is willing to be even faster. Let's head over to the Botnia Ring racetrack, 4 kilometers long, and the qualifying session has already begun. The drivers, most of the drivers are already on their flying laps. Daniel Libront, another driver from Poland, who is pretty fast in every round, but most times is running out of luck. So the two remaining rounds of the semi-finals will see fierce battles of most of the drivers, including Edvin Žadeikis, Kamil Pawlowski, Isaac Gillis and Simonas Urbonas, just to name a few drivers who will stand strong to finish as high as possible to earn as many points as possible. The lap is around 1 minute and 46 seconds long, meaning that the drivers will race around 12 laps in the 20 minutes races. There will be two 20 minutes sprint races in total. And the six top finishers of the first race will start the second sprint race with a reversed grid. Simonas Urbonas sets the early pace in the qualifying session. Edvin Žadeikis follows him, and Karolis Jovaiša is currently third. Daniel Libront should shortly cross the finish line, and we will be able to see the speed of the driver who came from Poland. He turned a lot of practice laps in the past week. And let's enjoy one full lap if possible, riding by the side of Daniel Libront in his Mini Cooper car. The front wheel driven car has around 275 horsepower, making it pretty challenging to drive around the twisty track located in Finland. Through turns 6 and 7, full speed and no liftoff was required there into turn 8 through turn 9. Daniel Libront is trying to run a little bit faster. The drivers went out on the racetrack on cold tires. The tire warmers are unallowed in this championship, meaning that the drivers have to build up the temperature into the tires by driving around the track, and they will become initially a little bit faster with a couple of laps turned in. Karolis Jovaiša sets another fastest lap, 1 minute 45.7. Kamil Pawlowski is not able to match the speed of the championship leader. Edvin Žadeikis gets back to the pit lane. Isaac Gillison sets the second fastest lap, and we have still a little bit more than 9 minutes of the session remaining. The drivers started to push as hard as possible, and we are still in the beginning of this session. 2 sprint races await after this session is completed. The drivers will have to be very careful during the start. The first corner is a mid-speed corner, meaning that it will not be that easy to make those overtakings count. And the drivers face lots of challenges after the lights go out. Still on board with Daniel Libront, circling around this track, which is located in Finland, 4 kilometers and 14 meters long, with a total of 16 corners. A variety of corners is available for the drivers. A set of fast and twisty sections are followed by slow, long braking turns. Daniel Libront drops down to the 9th place. Isaac Gillison, the driver from the Netherlands, is pretty close to the fastest lap time of this qualifying session, only 25 hundredths of a second slower, and the times might become a little bit faster. There are a lot of drivers that can go faster. By witnessing the practice sessions that took place this whole past week, there were many fast drivers, including Kamil Pavlovsky, Domantas Varnys, Daniel Librand and Isaac Gilisen. Edvinas Žadeikis is not on his rhythm at this moment. Edvinas is the driver who is currently second in the championship standings, but he's still looking for some good results in the two remaining rounds if he wants to advance to the finals. Only 6 best finishers of the semi-finals will get the chance to compete in the real-life tests to get that main prize seat in the Dream to Drive team. Daniel Librand goes up to the 4th place, only 1.5 tenths slower than the current qualifying leader Karolis Jovaiša. And the pace of the Lithuanian is pretty fast, but it is still beatable, meaning that Kamil Pavlovsky, Daniel Librand or even Isaac Gilisen can go faster and snatch that pole position. We have seen the places switch on the very last minutes in the past rounds of this semi-finals, meaning that any of the driver can relax in this session, including Karolis Jovaiša, who has set the early pace after the opening minutes. Edvinas Žadeikis is currently 6th, 3 tenths slower than Karolis Jovaiša. It looks like he's on a better pace, only 3600 of a second slower after the second sector. He's finishing the final 16th corner off to the main straight. Simonas Urbanas goes 4th fastest, just to be overtaken by Edvinas Žadeikis. Edvinas goes only 67 hundredths of a second slower than Karolis Jovaiša. Still sees only the 4th place in this qualifying session. Olli Polari just set the lap worth of the 10th place, and he's only 7 tenths behind Karolis Jovaiša, and we have 15 drivers that are within 1 second of the current qualifying leader, promising us a very intense race. Actually, 2 sprint races that will take place after this qualifying session runs out. The drivers are trying to run as fast as possible to set the maximum pace and get the highest starting positions that are possible to the driving of the drivers themselves. Haroldas Jotautas goes up to the 9th place, 1 minute 46.2. He's less than half a second slower than the current qualifying session leader Karolis Jovaiša. He's out on the racetrack. It looks like he's a tiny bit slower than his fastest lap time, and he prepares the car for a very good exit out of the final corner to start another fast lap. And he knows that he has to go a little bit faster because he has some very fast drivers right on his back. Isaac Gilisen. Kamil Pavlovsky is currently 3rd, not finding an empty track to go a little bit faster, only 37 hundredths of a second slower than Karolis Jovaiša. Kamil Pavlovsky is getting ready to set the late pace in this session. Simonas Urbanas beats Edvinas Žadeikis with his final try. Edvinas Žadeikis goes a little bit slower, and it looks like he just prepared his Mini for the next flying lap. There is still enough time in this qualifying session for one or a couple of flying laps for the drivers who are still out on the racetrack, even though one lap around this Finnish racetrack is pretty long. The drivers have to take good consideration when they want to get back into the pit lane to start the next fast flying lap and the next try in this session. Karolis Jovaiša half a second slower than his fastest lap in this session. Isaac Gilisen is on his outlap. into the final corner onto the straight, slides out a little bit too wide in that 16th corner. Still was looking for a good exit out of it to be able to start a good fast lap. He's very close on the fastest lap time in this session, and he's looking for his first pole position in the Dream to Drive semi-finals. Kamil Pawlowski has already 2 pole positions won in the past, still didn't see the victory in his hands. Was involved in an accident in the second round of the championship and got disconnected 2 weeks ago while chasing for the lead in the 20-minute sprint race, which took place in the Bikerniek racetrack located in Latvia. Edvinas Žadeikis, 6,700,000 of a second slower than Karolis Jovaiša, still only 5th in this session. He's currently 2nd in the championship standings, so he's just looking for some consistent points and good finishes. He would like to avoid the crashes that are possible in the coming races. He was taken out in the 3rd round of the championship, where he got 0 points in total. But only 5 best round results count in this championship out of the 6 rounds that take place in the semi-finals. Drivers still within a second from each other. Karolis Jovaiša just got returned to the pit lane, meaning that he will not be able to go faster in this session. He's still holding that provisional pole position. Isaac Gillison just made a mistake on his final try, still has enough time to start his final try. Kamil Pawlowski is on the racetrack. Let's stick around with the driver from Poland and see how he's coping with the pressure. He's only 1900,000 of a second slower than the pace setter Karolis Jovaiša, so Kamil Pawlowski is very close on getting the 3rd pole position in this championship. He has some slower cars right in front of him. Still plenty of space to run as fast as he would like to. Maybe he's enjoying a little bit of that slipstream generated from the car running in front. Karolis Jovaiša out of the car, and Kamil Pawlowski makes a huge mistake in the final corner. Still has enough of time to cross the line and start the next try. Kamil Pawlowski is not able to cope with the pressure at the moment. He still was lucky enough to start the final try in this session. Isaac Gillison half a second slower after the 2nd sector, so he will not be able to overtake Karolis Jovaiša in this session. Simonas Urbanas is on the racetrack. Edvinas Žadeikis around the final corner, and it looks like he did not get the chance to run faster. Got back into the pit lane, and his qualifying session is over. He's currently 5th, but there are drivers behind him that are still on the racetrack trying to go a little bit faster and looking to overtake Edvinas Žadeikis, including Dominykas Eičina, David Kalosca, Haroldas Jotautas and Juha Makijopi. Simonas Urbanas currently 4th, still staying on the track, trying to run as fast as possible. Let's stick around with the driver from Poland, Kamil Pawlowski, who was always on the back of Karolis Jovaiša in every round that he raced. He was still unlucky to overtake the Lithuanian driver, and he came for the 5th round to get that win. Karolis Jovaiša, the only driver in the semi-finals who has seen the finish flag first. No other driver has won the championship race yet. Kamil Pawlowski only 200,000 of a second slower than Karolis Jovaiša after the 3rd sector. Through the final corner, Kamil Pawlowski will cross the line in a couple of moments, and he does not manage to match the pace of Karolis Jovaiša, meaning that Karolis Jovaiša should become the winner of the qualifying session in this 5th round. Simonas Urbanas stops in the near of the track, and we can call quit with the qualifying session. Let's take a quick look at the final results. Karolis Jovaiša will take the first spot of the fifth round of the Dream to Drive semi-finals. Isaac Gilison snatches the second place. Kamil Pavlovsky will start third. Simonas Urbanas fourth. Edvinas Žadeikis fifth. Daniel Libront sixth. Haroldas Jotutas seventh. Dominikas Eichinas eighth. David Kalosai ninth. Oli Polari 10th. Juha Mekijopi 11th. Lukas Mickus 12th. Marius Kurnickas 13th. Dominik Plona 14th. Rope Kurkipea 15th. Ivan Olesiuk Ayuso 16th. Vytautas Sabutis 17th. Tomas Ševal 18th. Algirdas Sabutis 19th, Justas Pirnauskas 20th, Roberto Mielgo 21st, Marius Bielskus 22nd, Maciej Klus 23rd, Simon Palusievski 24th, and Justinas Saldukas takes the final 25th position on the grid. Let's go out on the racetrack where the drivers are already lined out on the grid. The drivers that start on the back rows have to complete the final quarter. Karolis Jovaiša, Isaac Gilison, Kamil Pavlovsky and Simonas Urbanas have a straight line for a good start. And don't forget to vote for the drivers of the day. The driver who will get the most votes of you will get some additional prizes from the sponsors of the championship. A couple of seconds till we see the first race of the fifth round. That's the Dream to Drive semi-finals. 6 drivers will advance to the finals where they will meet each other for the real life tests. Karolis Jovaiša on the left side of our screens. Isaac Gilison on the right side. Lights out and away we go. It looks like Karolis Jovaiša just missed the start by a tiny margin, and that's a good chance for Isaac Gilison to take that first spot. There was a small contact between Karolis Jovaiša and Isaac Gilison. Isaac Gilison takes that lead of Karolis Jovaiša, who is trying to strike back. We have a big crash in the backfield. Some of the drivers are standing off track. Edvinas Žadeikis took a nice start and overtook Simonas Urbanas. Karolis Jovaiša slides through the next corner, so the cars are on cold tires, so the drivers try to stay on a very tight line, which does not work for all the drivers. Edvinas Žadeikis did a fantastic job with the start, and he's running fourth right on the tail of Kamil Pavlovsky, and all these drivers that are running behind Karolis Jovaiša are battling for the top 6 places in the overall standings. Edvinas Žadeikis tried to brake as late as possible. Kamil Pavlovsky shut the doors close. On board with Karolis Jovaiša, who has the best view in his mirrors. He has the clearest track in front of him, but he sees a very nice battle happening behind him. And that should make Karolis Jovaiša happy, because when the drivers are fighting each other, they are not running that fast. Karolis Jovaiša outbrakes himself into the 8th corner onto a very long straight. Still holding that lead. We have a lot of battles in the midfield. Rope Kurpikea, Lukas Mickus, Tomas Ševal are all fighting for the places behind the top 10 positions. The points are still provided, but that's not enough for the drivers who came here to battle for the top 6 places in the overall standings. Contacts are not avoided in these close battle situations, and the front wheel driven cars with 275 horsepower provide a nice door-to-door battle racing action for the drivers and for us the viewers. Juha Mekijopi just made a good start. He's up to the 9th place, just overtook Dominikas Eichinas. Looks like the driver from Lithuania, Dominikas Eichinas, missed the chance to get a good start after the lights went out. Kamil Pavlovsky still running third, 3 tenths behind Isaac Gilison. Karolis Jovaiša has only 4 tenths lead over his nearest rival. Don't forget that the tires on these cars wear and are set to wear 2 times faster than they normally would, meaning that the drivers have to be very careful on the brakes. The cars do not have nor ABS nor traction control, so the tires might wear out a little bit faster than for some other drivers, meaning that the drivers might get in trouble and could be becoming very defensive. Karolis Jovaiša just made a couple of small mistakes, and that allowed Isaac Gillissen to run right on his tail. We're running on board with Karolis Jovaiša, and you can see that almost all the drivers are very close to each other. We have completed the second lap. Karolis Jovaiša sets the fastest lap of the race, but only by 2100,000 of a second faster than the second place Isaac Gillissen. Second placed driver Isaac Gillissen, he's still running right on the tail of Karolis Jovaiša. Edvinas Žadeikis has to go defensive from Simonas Urbanas. Simonas is looking very racy this evening. He did set a better pace in the qualifying session and took the fourth spot just to lose it after the lights went out. Edvinas Žadeikis runs fourth and has not only to watch and absorb what's happening in front of him, he has to watch his rear view mirrors closely. The sixth and seventh turn completed. The fast chicane of the Finnish racetrack. The drivers completed without any lift of the throttle. Juha Mäki-Jopi runs ninth, right on the tail of David Kalostsai. And you can see that the first and the 10th place are separated by the tiniest margin. The Juha Mäki-Jopi with a late move over David Kalostsai, but it looks like he makes that move complete. So if the drivers want to make those overtaking maneuvers work, they have to be a little bit more creative and a little bit more aggressive. I think David Kalostsai was not expecting the late braking of Juha Mäki-Jopi, so the driver from Finland, Juha Mäki-Jopi, goes up to the 8th place. That's his home track, so maybe he's familiar with it from the real world racing. Karolis Jovaiša setting another fastest lap of this session, and again only by 200,000 of a second faster than the second place Isaac Gillissen. The gap is still only 0.3 of a second between the first and the second placed drivers. And let me remind you that the top 6 finishers of the first race will start the second sprint race in a reversed grid positions, meaning that Daniel Librand, who's currently 6th, he should start the second race from pole position if he manages to finish the first race still running 6th. Very close and tight racing action. The gaps are still very small between most of the drivers. Someone outbraked himself into the 8th corner, which is one of the slowest corners on the racetrack, although there are plenty of such slow corners. That should provide some nice opportunities for those overtaking maneuvers, but until the drivers do not make any mistakes, not a lot of overtaking possibilities are coming for the leaders. Let's stick around with the mid-pack runners. Palutsevsky just managed to get around David Plona, still side by side into that 11th turn. Front-wheel driven Mini Cooper cars allow for this nice close door-to-door racing action, and Palutsevsky still not finding the better line to make that overtaking work in the fight with David Plona. Karolis Jovaiša setting another fastest lap, and just to be overtaken by Kamil Pavlovsky. So the fastest driver after 4 completed laps is Kamil Pavlovsky, who's running 3rd, and he's getting closer to the driver from the Netherlands in front of him. Only 4 tenths separating the 2nd and the 3rd place. We are still enjoying some battles between the drivers who are running in the lower grid positions. On board with Algirdas Sabutis, he's trying to make that overtake maneuver work on Justas Pirnauskas, and Justas Pirnauskas just outbraked himself, and he should lose a couple of places more. The drivers have to be very careful and they have to look ahead. The smallest, even the tiniest mistake might cost not only one place but a couple of places, because the drivers are running very close to each other, and three leaders have gotten away from Edvinas Žadeikis and Simonas Urbonas. The gap is up to around 1 second. Simonas Urbonas tries to brake as late as possible, both of the drivers locking up their tires. Daniel Librand is right on the tail of Simonas Urbonas. He's watching what's happening right in front of him and wishing for the drivers to make those racing actions ready, just for them to start running a little bit slower and allowing Daniel Librand to make that pass. The drivers want as many points as possible in these two remaining rounds of the semi-finals. There's a fierce fight for the remaining 5 places to advance to the finals. The only driver of the championship, Karolis Jovaiša, who has already secured the place in the next round. The drivers will face each other in real-life tests, and they will start the finals with 0 points. This round, the semi-finals, is only worth for the top 6 drivers to advance to the next round. Daniel Librand tries to run as tight and as consistent as possible. He sees that the 2 drivers in front of him are fighting and struggling a little bit, so Daniel Librand does not want to miss that chance. Edvinas Žadeikis is braking very late into turn 8, manages to complete that braking maneuver and stop in time. Juha Mäki-Jopi and David Kolosai do not stop battling each other. Dominykas Seičinas runs 10th right behind both of the 2 drivers. Dominykas Seičinas looking for a better finish. He needs those points. Someone is just ran a little bit wide in front of Dominykas. Dominykas misses the braking point. Has to back off to avoid a contact. Lots of the drivers locking up the tires. It's a very common situation for the front wheel driven cars. The rear inside wheel gets locked up pretty easily before the heavy braking corners. They even tend to lift off the ground slightly, therefore they are locking up a little bit. Karolis Jovaiša was 1.5 tenths slower than Isaac Gillison, and he's only 5 tenths ahead of him, so the fight is still not over for the win of the first sprint race. This is the 5th round of the Dream to Drive Championship semi-finals. We are running on board with Dominykas Seičinas, who is fighting for the top 6 places to advance to the finals. He is currently 10th, running right behind David Kolosai. David is starting to make some small mistakes. Maybe his tires are overheated a little bit. This is a very challenging racetrack for the drivers. Lots of corners, although it's only 4 kilometers long. Dominykas Seičinas not being able to run a little bit faster, does not find a cure, and just lost the back end of the car by a huge amount. Good news for Dominykas Seičinas that the cars are driven by the front wheels, meaning that Dominykas just had to make his right foot very heavy and hit the gas, and the car straightened out itself. But Dominykas Seičinas lost a couple of tenths. He's still only 6 tenths behind David Kolosai. Justas Bernauskas just dropped down to the final position together with Vytautas Sabutis. They were running close to each other. That might be the case of hard battling and some heavier contact. Karolis Jovaiša still leading the group, the only race winner of the championship. Karolis Jovaiša won all past 4 rounds, and he's looking for another win. He's currently running first. There are 2 sprint races this evening. The points will be calculated, and Karolis Jovaiša has to finish as high as possible in the second race. if he manages to win this one. A small mistake from the race leader, and Isaac Gillesen is a little bit too far behind, although he is able to close that gap to the gap that's almost unseeable. 2 tenths separating the two leaders. Kamil Pawlowski just lost out a little bit to Isaac Gillesen. But the fight is building up in front of the Polish driver. He did not manage to put a decent or a fastest lap in the qualifying session. And Simonas Urbonas just lost out to Daniel Librand. It looks like Simonas Urbonas made a mistake running on his own, so Daniel Librand is up to the 5th position. Simonas Urbonas runs 6th, and he's currently holding that provisional pole position for that 2nd race. Juha Mäki-Jopi managed to go around Haroldas Jotutas. Haroldas trying to fight back for that 7th place, and I'm pretty sure Haroldas Jotutas wishes that the top 8 places would be reversed for the 2nd sprint race, for him to be able to get some better chances for the win when the drivers are so tight and so similar on pace. That means that any driver who might start from the pole position is able to win the next sprint race. That's not the case for Haroldas Jotutas, who he just dropped down to the 8th place after he was running 7th. Juha Mäki-Jopi making some good progress in the first sprint race. 5.5 minutes of the race remaining. Isaac Gillesen still running right on the tail of Karolis Jowisza. Less than 3 tenths separating both of the leaders, meaning that any tiniest mistake might end up the fight for the win for the current leader. He's still very tight on his line and hitting all those brake marks. Edvinas Žadeikis tries to stay and keep up with the 3 leaders. He lost out some time in the opening minutes. He's now 1 second behind Kamil Pawlowski. Kamil Pawlowski sees a chance running behind Isaac Gillesen. Isaac Gillesen was forced to brake a little bit later, and that's some opportunity opening for Kamil Pawlowski. He's up to the 2nd place. Isaac Gillesen just made a mistake on his own, braked a little bit too late and too deep. Edvinas Žadeikis is a little bit too far behind these drivers to try and use this situation. Side by side, Isaac Gillesen and Kamil Pawlowski. Kamil holding that inside line. For the 11th corner, Isaac Gillesen runs a little bit too deep into the outside. Edvinas Žadeikis gets a little bit closer. That's right on board with a Lithuanian driver. He's running 4th, enjoying the view and the battle happening in front of him. Isaac Gillesen, the driver from the Netherlands, just made a mistake that cost him the 2nd place. With 4 minutes of the race remaining, the drivers behind the leaders started to battle each other and lose some time. They are running a little bit slower, giving some precious space for the current leader. Edvinas Žadeikis took 5 tenths away from both of the drivers in front of him. Actually, he managed to put a lap that was 1 second and 1 tenth faster than the lap of Isaac Gillesen. Still 5 tenths behind Isaac. Edvinas Žadeikis is a little bit too far for some overtaking to happen. Edvinas is 2 seconds in front of Daniel Librand. Simonas Urbonas with that costly mistake is down to 6th. And it looks like he will not be able to catch up with Daniel Librand. They are running on a very, very similar pace. Kamil Pawlowski got up to the 2nd position, and it looks like he finds some better lines when he's running behind Karolis Jowisza. He's getting closer to the leader. Karolis Jowisza had 1 full second advantage against the 2nd place Kamil Pawlowski, but Kamil Pawlowski managed to get that gap down to 6, now to 7 tenths between him and the leader. Karolis Jowisza just made another mistake and just made a huge lockup of that inside tire. Still managed to handle it and stay in front. David Kalosai losing another place to Dominikas Eičinas. Dominikas goes up to the 9th place, side by side into turn 11. And it looks like Dominikas Eičinas is able to get that 9th place. Some important points for the Lithuanian would be awarded if he manages to finish in the very same place. He has to finish the second sprint race, though, to get those valuable points, but the drivers look to run very, very tight and respect each other this evening, so hopefully the second sprint race will see no difference in the racing style. Izagilisen lost the second place to Kamil Pawlowski. Both of these drivers are very fast and they are fighting for the remaining 5 places in the finish of the semi-finals. Karolis Jovysha holding that one spot for the finals. Still racing very hard and still trying to get that next win in this championship. All 4 wins belong to the young Lithuanian driver Karolis Jovysha, who is on a mission, willing to win this championship and get that phenomenal prize, a seat in the Dream to Drive team. Don't forget to vote for the driver of the day. The first sprint race is almost complete. 50 seconds of race remain, and we will see the next 20 minutes sprint race after a break. When this race finishes, we have to finish it first, and I'm not sure if Karolis Jovysha will cross the line until the time runs out, but it looks like so we are on the penultimate lap. Karolis Jovysha will start the final lap of the first sprint race in a couple of meters. And we have started the final lap of the first sprint race of the 5th round of the Dream to Drive Championship semi-finals. Edvinas Žadeikis runs 4th right on the tail of Izagilisen. It looks like Izagilisen started to struggle on his tires. He's 9/10 behind Kamil Pawlowski, and there's a chance incoming for Edvinas Žadeikis to finish a little bit higher than he's now at the moment. Still, an overtaking maneuver is very hard to achieve in these very similar machinery. No setup adjustments, all running identical setups and identical cars. Edvinas Žadeikis goes sideways in the battle with Izagilisen. There's a chance coming for Daniel Librant. A big shame that Daniel Librant was too far behind these 2 drivers. He's 7/10 behind Edvinas Žadeikis at this moment, on board with Karolis Jovysha, who's approaching the end of the lap, and it looks like the driver from Poland, Kamil Pawlowski, is getting faster and faster with every meter that he runs, but he is running out of corners and out of time. Only 3.5 tenths separating these 2 drivers who met each other in all the previous rounds of the semi-finals. They meet again. Kamil Pawlowski just took the 2nd place away of Izagilisen. He's looking for that win in the first sprint race. Karolis Jovysha is not the driver who is easily overtaken. Karolis Jovysha manages to slow down in time, close the door and cross the line in first place. Kamil Pawlowski finishes 2nd. Izagilisen comes home 3rd. Edvinas Žadeikis has to go slightly defensive from Daniel Librant. Simonas Urbonas finishes 3rd. Juha Mekijopi 7th. Haroldas Jototas 8th. Dominikas Eičinas 9th. And David Kalosai finishes 10th. 25 drivers started in the first division this evening. Dominik Plona will cross the line 16th, Algirdas Sabutis 18th. So this was the first sprint race. I do not recall some bigger accidents except the one that happened after the lights went out. So it looks like all the drivers should be safe with the results as they are at the moment. Karolis Jovysha taking the win. Kamil Pawlowski finished 2nd. Izagilisen 3rd. Edvinas Žadeikis 4th. Daniel Librant 5th. Simonas Urbonas 6th. All these drivers will start the second sprint race in a reversed order, meaning that Simonas Urbonas will start the race first and he will have a lot of chances of winning the second race of the fifth round of the Dream to Drive Championship, the semi-finals. There are 6 rounds in total. The drivers are battling for the top 6 places in the overall standings to advance to the finals. They will meet each other for the real life tests and real life challenges, just to know who the one lucky winner is who will get that seat in the coming season in the Dream to Drive team. Let's take a quick break and let's take a quick look at how the Dream to Drive team is facing the real challenges in the real life, and we will meet in about 4 to 5 minutes for the second sprint race of this evening. Hello and welcome to the Dream to Drive Championship, the 5th round of the semi-finals. 100 fastest drivers qualify to race for the top 6.
Auto plus Verstappen, tai yra lenktynės, reivas, festivalis, merginos, automobiliai.
Niekada ten nebuvusiam žmogui turbūt nelabai ryšiai suprasti, kas ten tvyro ore.
Man širdžiai mieliausias renginys, kokiam aš esu dalyvavęs savo gyvenime. Kažkas pradėjo staigiai, stipriai daužytis ir tai tą akimirką tai atrodo kaip perkūnas iš giedro dangaus ir labiausiai buvo gaila galbūt komandas, kad tiek darbo įdėjom, atvažiavom ir galbūt čia bus tokia pabaiga.
Nuėmus ratą pasimatė visa bėda. Atsisukę yra pusušio varžtai, ten viskas išsitaškė, tepalų nerasta, dėžė, žioje tokia skylė.
Atėjo Ignas ir pasakė, kad vyrai turim 6 valandas, tai per tiek laiko galim nuversti kalnus. Ačiū Dievui, mums mąstymas pagelbėjo ir mes tempėm automobilį pas juos.
Jau praktiškai nukelinėjant pavarų dėžę, paaiškėjo, kad jos negalime ištraukti, nes rėmėsi į subframe'ą. Kol Vaidas virino, aš tikiau varžtus ir dėjau atgal pavarų dėžę. Tuo metu komandos inžinierius Dainius taisė sriegius, taip pat Vaidas padarė plokštumas ir lėkėm pilna to žodžio prasme į kačergą.
Susikrovė visi daiktus, bėgom ją pasitikti ir pamatyti ir užvesti.
Dar nemačiau, kad taip greit surinktume visą automobilio priekį, buvo žaibiškai viskas susukta, bet viską spėjom, išpylėm kuro, dar spėjom ir padangas pasirinkti, kurios geresnės.
Pats faktas, kad mūsų pirmųjų kvalifikacijų metu lyjant stipriam lietui tarp tikrai galingų varžovų iškovojom pirmą vietą, neleido nuleisti rankų. Tai tokios lenktynėse tikrai negali nestartuoti. Nežinau, kur esam, kokioje pozicijoje ir pamačiau jų visas jau reakcijas ir daužymą per kapotą, jau buvo viskas aišku, kad atidirbom. Ypatingai Verstappen dienos istorija, būtent kaip mum jį prasidėjo, kaip jinai nukrito, nuo kur mes atsispyrėm ir ką mes pasiekėm. Tai turbūt buvo didžiausias vainikas, kokį mes galėjom išregzti savo rankomis.
So let's get ready for the second race. The drivers are already on the grid, and let's experience the start from a different angle. Let's ride on board with Karolis Jovaiša, who starts the race 6th. And let's see all the start drama from the first race winner perspective. You can hear the engines roaring. The drivers are ready. I can feel the intense pressure in the air. All lights are on, and away we go. Karolis Jovaiša doesn't miss the start this time, but it looks like he does not get away that good as his competitors. The drivers in front are already starting to battle each other. We don't see the results on the left side. There was a small contact between Edvinas Žadeikis and Kamil Pavlovsky. It looks like Edvinas Žadeikis losing some positions, and he just dropped down to the 6th place, so not the best start for Edvinas Žadeikis, the driver who finished 4th in the first sprint race. Gets back to the 5th place, overtaking Karolis Jovaiša. Simonas Urbanas comfortably leading the second race. Let's ride on board with the leader of the second sprint race. He leads Daniel Librant, Isaac Gilisen, Kamil Pavlovsky and Edvinas Žadeikis into the first lap of the second sprint race of the 5th round of the semi-finals. Kamil Pavlovsky trying to break very late. Was that a defensive move from Edvinas Žadeikis? Edvinas started the second sprint race a little bit more aggressively. We have a couple of drivers who are dropping positions. Looks like they were involved in some sort of a context when we were concentrating on the battle in front. These all drivers that race in front are battling for the final remaining 5 places to advance to the finals. The 1 place belongs to Karolis Jovaiša. He won all rounds that took place in the past in this semi-final event. And Simonas Urbanas still comfortably leading the race. As mentioned before, all the drivers are capable to win the race if they get a chance to start a little bit higher, and the chance came for Simonas Urbanas. It looks like he's holding on to it as strong as he can imagine and as he can manage that. The first lap is completed of the second sprint race. David Kalossai runs 9th, Oskar Polari 10th, and Dominykas Seičinas lost a couple of places. He runs 11th. He finished the first race in the 9th place. Dominykas Seičinas is still one of the drivers who is battling for the remaining places to advance to the finals. Dominykas Seičinas already participated in some Dream to Drive championships in the past, is yet to see that win in the overall standings to take that spot in the Dream to Drive team. A dream for many of the drivers participating in this championship. David Kalossai runs 9th, very close on Haroldas Jototas, still a little bit too far, even though the gap is only 3/10, and there is some battling growing up in front. Edvinas Žadeikis and Karolis Jovaiša, the 2 Lithuanian comrades. Karolis Jovaiša is currently 1st in the overall standings. Edvinas Žadeikis 2nd. They are fighting for that 5th place on the track. It looks like Daniel Librant is trying to make a little bit of pressure on Simonas Urbanas. Simonas Urbanas handles that with ease and remains in front, and there's a chance for Isaac Gilisen. So the drivers have to be very, very clever when they are planning some of the overtaking maneuvers. If the overtaking does not succeed, they might lose the position that they are running at, because you can see how small and tiny the gaps are between the drivers. Approaching the completion of the second lap, Simonas Urbanas still leads the pack, and actually he just extended the lead over the second place Daniel Librant. Isaac Gilisen managed to put in the fastest lap of the second sprint race, and he's right on the tail of Daniel Librant. Daniel Librant has to go defensive, approaching the second corner of the Bodnia Ring racetrack, manages to break in time and still stay in front of Isaac Gilisen. Kamil Pavlovsky waits patiently behind these 2 drivers on board with Kamil. Kamil is yet to see a win in this championship. He's currently 4th. He managed to finish 2nd in the first sprint race. He's looking for a good amount of points, and maybe that would work for him, as to become the leader or the winner of the 5th round. The points of the 2 sprint races will be calculated, and the way the drivers will finish the event will be regarding the points. Zagilison takes the outside line and tries to line his car for the inside line for the coming 8th corner. Daniel Lebron closes the door, but makes that very, very aggressively. Edvinas Žadeikis tries to go through. Karolis Jovaiša is very, very careful, does not want to mix in this fight, where drivers are crashing into each other. All of the drivers remain on track. Kamil Pavlovsky is under pressure by his country fellow man Daniel Lebron. Daniel stays in front of Kamil Pavlovsky. Karolis Jovaiša is very, very cautious in this situation, does not want to get involved in any accidents, and that's the best news for the current race leader Simonas Urbonas. He has already 1.7 seconds advantage what's happening in front of Karolis Jovaiša. The drivers are coming into each other. Kamil Pavlovsky just crashed into Daniel Lebron, and Karolis Jovaiša has to back out of it if he wants to finish the race. He wants as many points as possible, and he's looking for an overtake maneuver on Kamil Pavlovsky. Kamil lines out in the inside of the corner on his fellow countryman Daniel Lebron. A very dangerous situation. The cars are driven by front wheels, so the drivers have to be very careful on the braking, taking the inside line in the battle for the 5th place. Side by side, Karolis Jovaiša and Kamil Pavlovsky, both of these drivers battle for the wins of the races in the previous rounds. They battle for the 5th place at this moment. Juha Mäki-Jopi gets the chance to get a little bit closer on the fight. It looks like Edvinas Žadeikis and Izak Gilisen are running side by side, exiting that 8th corner. Edvinas Žadeikis is on fire, and he's looking for a better finish in the 2nd sprint race. It looks like Karolis Jovaiša and Kamil Pavlovsky did not stop battling each other. Haroldas Jototas and Juha Mäki-Jopi, the next 2 drivers that are running side by side. Edvinas Žadeikis tries to brake as late as possible, still exiting the corner side by side. Karolis Jovaiša just completed that move, so he's up to the 5th place. Zagilison holding that inside line for the coming 11th corner, so he's on a better line to take that spot and protect the position. Edvinas Žadeikis has to regain has to reject off the battle this moment, but all this harsh battling of each other on the racetrack is the best possible news for the current race leader Simonas Urbonas. He has already some 2.5 seconds advantage over his nearest rival. So all that he needs to do this evening is just to make no mistakes and try to finish the race. I'm not sure it's possible for any other driver to gain and minimize the gap that Simonas Urbonas is currently having. So Simonas Urbonas on the way for his win. Karolis Jovaiša and Kamil Pavlovsky still continue to battle it out on the racetrack. A small contact between these 2 drivers. Both of the drivers remain on track, and Karolis Jovaiša has to drive a little bit more aggressive to save that spot that he runs at this moment. Edvinas Žadeikis goes up to the 2nd place, so finally he managed to go around the driver from the Netherlands. Edvinas Žadeikis looking for a 2nd place finish in the 2nd sprint race, so the drivers are pretty mixed up in the 2nd sprint race compared to the finishing positions as they finished in the 1st sprint race, making it almost impossible to guess who will become the overall winner of the 5th round. But the points are very valuable for every driver racing on track this evening. Karolis Jovaiša has to go defensive. Kamil Pavlovsky looking on to the inside of the track. Karolis Jovaiša outbrakes himself and loses the back end of the car a little bit. Back on the power and straightens the car out. Kamil Pavlovsky is very, very racy, and I'm pretty sure he's not happy with the place and the position that he's currently running. He finished 2nd in the 1st sprint race, so finishing 6th and behind Karolis Jovaiša would eliminate him any chances to win this round against the Lithuanian driver. Kamil Pavlovsky tries to run as tight as possible. We can see Edvinas Žadeikis growing the gap between him and Izak Gilisen, and Edvinas Žadeikis just drove a lap that was his personal best time of the 2nd sprint race. We're still running on board with Kamil Pavlovsky, who's running 6th right behind Karolis Jovaiša, but it looks like he lost the moment of the possible overtaking maneuver that he might produce. Haroldas Jototas runs not right on the tail of Olli Polari, the driver from Finland. Juha Mäki-Jopi is 7th, so he's looking for some good finishing positions and some valuable points in the championship. On the penultimate round of the semi-finals, the finishing positions are very important this evening for every driver. It looks like Simonas Urmanas is on a road to snatch a lot of points from this round, but it's still pretty hard to tell and to guess who the driver with the most points will end up after this race finishes. Karolis Jovaiša still being defensive over Kamil Pavlovsky. Both of the drivers are on a very similar pace. The tiniest mistake makes the gap invisible, and the chances open up for the driver from Poland. It looks like Karolis Jovaiša is a little bit faster than Daniel Librand. He's still 8/10 behind him. Daniel Librand is trying to snatch that 3rd place away of Iza Gillesen. Edvinas Žadeikis, after putting that very fast lap together, is not able to grow that gap anymore. It looks like the tires are suffering pretty badly on this Mini Cooper cars. Karolis Jovaiša just set his personal fastest lap time, even though he is still being very defensive in the battle for the 5th place. And let's take a quick look at the battles happening in some lower positions. David Kalosai just lost out to Dominykas Seičinas. Edvinas Žadeikis just made a mistake. Was that's Iza Gillesen who made a mistake? It looks like Iza Gillesen was fighting Edvinas Žadeikis for the 2nd place, and Iza Gillesen is off track and losing lots of positions. That's a very important moment of the race, and every position counts. The points are very important, so this huge mistake made by Iza Gillesen, the driver from the Netherlands, is very important, and Karolis Jovaiša is still very defensive in the battle for the 4th place at this moment. Kamil Pavlovsky wants that place badly. Karolis Jovaiša is not able to extend that gap that he's carrying against Kamil Pavlovsky, and both of these drivers made a couple of mistakes and lost out to Daniel Librand and Edvinas Žadeikis. Edvinas Žadeikis just lost some pace. Maybe he has lost the compound of the tires. The tires are veering out pretty fast. The drivers did not have a lot of rubber remaining after the 1st sprint race, and the 2nd race is a little bit more racy. The drivers race each other, and that wears out the tires a little bit faster. Iza Gillesen has to defend the position from Haroldas Jototas. He's running only 8 at this moment. The only safest driver this evening in the 2nd sprint race is Simonas Urmanas. He has a very comfortable gap of 3.6 seconds, and the drivers behind him are battling each other. So Simonas Urmanas is just looking for a very calm race that is left for him. Only 7 minutes of racing this evening, 7 laps completed. There should be 12 laps in total, making it only 5 laps remaining, 5.5 laps remaining. Not a lot of time for the drivers who are looking for some better places this evening. Daniel Librand still running behind Edvinas Žadeikis. Edvinas is struggling a little bit after putting that very fast lap together. Looks like Edvinas Žadeikis has harmed his tires quite badly, not being able to run and match the pace that he was able to put together a couple of laps ago. Still tries to hit all those break points and apexes. Messes a little bit in the braking zone coming into the 11th corner. Karolis Jovaiša runs pretty fast and is gaining on Daniel Librand with 6 minutes remaining. He still sees some opportunities in front to try and finish a little bit higher, but the 4th place finish would be a very good position for him to become the overall winner of the 5th round. And the gap is still decreasing. Daniel Librand is not able to run as fast as the drivers behind. Both of them, Karolis Jovic and Kamil Pavlovsky, are pretty fast. Karolis was 4 tenths faster than Daniel Librand the last time they crossed the line. 1.5 minutes remaining, 8 laps completed. Haroldas Jototas still runs 8th. Behind Isaac Gillison. It looks like Isaac Gillison returned to the pace that he was able to match in the beginning of the second sprint race, but still lost a lot of positions in that incident that took place a couple of laps ago, and that might be a very huge loss of points for the driver from the Netherlands. Only 2 rounds of the semi-finals remaining. There will be only 1 round after this one, and remaining that will take place in 2 weeks' time. The track and the car is still unknown. It will be announced only 1 week prior the actual event. That's in 1 week time. Isaac Gillison comes closer to Olli Polari, and he wants some more points in this race. It looks like he is able to run a little bit faster than the driver in front of him. The Finnish driver, Karolis Jovic, only 4 tenths behind Daniel Librand, so a nice battle should be building up in front too. Haroldas Jototas trying to stay as close as possible with the car in front. Isaac Gillison should start some overtaking maneuvers in a couple of corners. He's right on the tail of Olli Polari, and 9 laps completed, so the time is ticking out. Edvinas Žadeikis managed to stabilize his pace, still only 6 tenths lead against Daniel Librand. He doesn't need to lose his concentration and make mistakes, because he would risk to lose the positions to drivers. Rupe Kurkipie and David Kolosai were battling for the 11th place. David Kolosai just lost the back end of the car completely, managed to control the car. That's not the hardest task to do in these front wheel driven cars. On board with Kamil Pavlovsky, he's running 5th right behind Karolis Jovic. And the gaps between the 2nd and the 5th place are pretty small, meaning that any driver of this pack may finish the race in the 2nd place. Simonas Urbonas is out of reach, but these 4 drivers are still able to switch and swap positions. After Simonas Urbonas will cross the line this time by, there will be only 2 laps of this 2nd sprint race remaining. Kamil Pavlovsky just made a mistake. Still runs tightly behind Karolis Jovic. Karolis got himself a little bit closer to Daniel Librand. I'm sure Karolis Jovic will try to stay a little bit more careful. He does not need to make any mistakes and lose the position, risk to lose the position that he's currently running. He is looking for some strong points and the possibility to end up as the overall winner of the 5th round, making him the only winner of the semi-finals of the 5 rounds. Daniel Librand goes defensive, so obviously he made a mistake in that first corner. Kamil Pavlovsky is a little bit too far behind. No position changes here. Isaac Gillison still running very close on the back end of Olli Polari. And he tried to take that inside line into the 2nd corner. Haroldas Jototas just made a mistake. There's a chance incoming for Dominykas Eičinas. Both of the Lithuanians fighting for the 9th place. Dominykas Eičinas managed to finish the first sprint race 9th. And another mistake by Haroldas Jototas, allowing Dominykas Eičinas to go through into the 9th place. So Dominykas Eičinas is looking for some very important points, and I'm not sure how that will turn out. Dominykas Eičinas is the driver who is fighting for the top 6 places in this championship. He's currently 10th, but he's only 20 points behind Edvinas Žadeikis, who is 2nd in the overall standings. So all the points are very valuable for the drivers in any race. especially in the penultimate race of the championship. Look how tight it is up in front. Edvinas Žadeikis only half a second in front of Daniel Librant, and all the four cars are very close to each other. Simonas Urbanas will start the final lap the next time he crosses the start and finish line. It looks like Simonas Urbanas lost some time in the battle of the final laps. The gap went down to 2.5 seconds. He had 3.6 seconds advantage at some sort of a point of the race. The final lap has started. Edvinas Žadeikis has 7/10 of advantage against Daniel Librant, so it looks like he's pretty safe on that position, but Kamil Pawlowski, the driver from Poland, is right on the tail of Karolis Joviša, so we're back on the very same situation as we were one race ago. The first sprint race has seen both of these two drivers battling and fighting for the win of that race. Oscar Polari just lost out to Isaac Gillison, so Isaac managed to get one place higher. It looks like he managed to complete that move cleanly. Braking very late, Edvinas Žadeikis risks all that is remaining on the threads of his tires. That was turn 8. Edvinas Žadeikis stays in front of Daniel Librant. Kamil Pawlowski tries to run as close as possible to the back end of the car right in front of him, which is driven by Karolis Joviša. Turn 11, one of the slower corners of the track. Edvinas Žadeikis runs wide, still manages to get back on the power and remain in front of Daniel Librant, so a lot of pressure in the hands of the drivers. Edvinas Žadeikis knows that he needs this finish, he needs these points. Oscar Polari just managed to go around Isaac Gillison, so Isaac Gillison just lost out the 7th place that he just managed to snatch. Simonas Urbanas completing the final corner and looking for the first win in the Dream to Drive semi-finals, and he is very safe on that. Congratulations to Simonas Urbanas. Edvinas Žadeikis finishes 2nd, Daniel Librant 3rd, Karolis Joviša 4th, Kamil Pawlowski 5th, Juha Maki Jopi, the driver from Finland, finishes 6th, and Oli Polari, the next Finnish driver, sees the Finnish flag in the 7th place. Isaac Gillison 8th, Dominikas Seičinas 9th, Haroldas Jototas 9th, Rope Kurkipė 11th, David Kalosai 12th, Tomas Cheval 13th, Olesiejuk Ayuso 14th, and all 25 drivers that started the 5th round will going to see the finish line, and Marius Kurnitskas and Roberto Mielgo just managed to get together on the final corner, giving the 23rd spot to Marius Bielskus. So that is it. The 7th round of the Dream to Drive Championship is completed. Let's take a quick look at the final results of the 2nd sprint race. Simonas Urbanas just won the 2nd sprint race, but it's still too early to say who is the driver who will get those most points to get that overall win of the 1st division. Simonas Urbanas, Edvinas Žadeikis, Daniel Librant, Karolis Joviša and Kamil Pawlowski are the top 5 drivers of the 1st division. Martin Svidrek, Eimantas Šiaurys, Domantas Varnys, Jan Matijas and Christopher Gruber are the top 5 finishers of the 2nd division. Let's take a quick look at how the voting of the driver of the day went by this evening. I have it ready and we can take a quick look at it. Driver of the day, Edvinas Žadeikis, taking the lead with 54.84% against the nearest rival. So congratulations on that to Edvinas Žadeikis. Some good battles, good and valuable points for most of the drivers. I hope you enjoyed the battles. The next and the final round will take place in 2 weeks' time, on Thursday evening. And that is it for this evening. I'm wishing you a very good night, and we will see you next time.
Ko reikia, kad verslas augtų greičiau? Aiškiai girdėti savo klientus, turėti tinkamus įrankius darbui ir laiku užtikrinti reikiamus resursus. O gal svarbiausia, kad jums nereikėtų tuo rūpintis? Palikite tai mums, mes pasirūpinsime jūsų ryšio, darbo vietos ir IT sprendimais. Susisiekime. Telia, kad verslas augtų greičiau.